A bizarre case in Houston, Texas leaves a family, the police, and the community devastated. A teenager stabbed his twin sister in the neck, killing her. His defense? He was sleepwalking. On this week's episode of Two Crime Newsies, we hear from the killer, who says he's not guilty despite admitting he did it. Hey everyone, thanks for being with us. I'm Jen.
Hi, I'm Tina. Great intro, Jen.
Thanks. What an episode.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So, little listener warning right off the top. We are going to talk about some things that some people might find disturbing. It does involve familial homicide.
Yeah, any kind of homicide is not good.
Agreed.
It's hard to watch. I saw the trailer of this episode and I was immediately pulled into this story.
We'll get into the episode in a second, but we are talking about a 48-hour show called The Boy Who Killed His Twin. It's season 38, episode 1, and it's narrated by Aaron Moriarty. Should we jump into it?
Let's do it.
All right, so the show opens with a 911 call. The dispatcher asks what the emergency is, and a boy responds, "I just killed my sister. Oh my God." The 911 operator tells him, "Tell me exactly what happened." The boy responds, "I thought it was a dream. I took my knife and I stabbed her." He goes on to say, "Please, I don't want her to die. I'm so sorry." The dispatcher at this point asks how old she is, and he responds 17. We're twins. The dispatcher asks, "Is she awake?" He says, "Yes, she's like barely alive." The 911 operator goes on to say, "Is there anyone else there in the house with you?" He responds, "There is. It's my parents, but they're asleep." The boy is Benjamin Elliott, and the date is September 29th, 2021. It's 4:41 in the morning when the 911 call comes through to the police department.
Jen, they played this 911 call in the trailer before the show aired, and I was stunned listening to it. This call is the reason I wanted to cover this show. It's incredibly heartbreaking to listen to. And to me, his voice sounds like he's in disbelief, maybe even in shock.
The 911 dispatcher goes on to say, "Okay, I need you to go wake them up," meaning his parents. That's when you can hear Benjamin Elliott yelling, "Mom, Dad." The dispatcher tells him, "We're going to have to start CPR right now." And that's when the dispatcher walks him through how to do CPR.
I have a lot of questions at this point, and I don't know where to start. But do you have any thoughts on Benjamin calling 911 before waking up his parents? Because I do think it's the right thing to do to get help right away. But I also think I'd probably be screaming for help and wake up the whole house.
I think it's also one of those situations, everybody responds to things differently, and the way you might respond to something is not the way somebody else will. And I think in that moment in time too, like you are so just, it's the middle of the night, it's 4:40 in the morning, you're tired, this is happening, there's clearly blood everywhere. I don't think you're operating all the way.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
I do think that it was a good response to call for help, to call 911.
Yeah. We then go to police body camera footage on the screen. We see an officer asking a very confused looking woman who opens the door. He's asking her, "Where's your son? Where's your son?" That's when Benjamin's dad, Michael Elliott, opens the door even further and is seen yelling at the police to please help him. Next on the screen, we see a stretcher being taken to the house by emergency medical crews. We're then taken into what looks like a bedroom, and the officer is standing behind Benjamin Elliott, who is wearing a gray t-shirt and is doing chest compressions on his sister. That's when we see in the video emergency crews walk into the room and they ask Benjamin if they can take over and then ask him to step out of the room. It's so chaotic. And that's when, as Benjamin is led down a hallway of his house, you hear a tearful Michael Elliott, Benjamin's dad, calling, "What happened, son?" And Benjamin responds, "It was a dream." Michael Elliott is then in what looks like a living room surrounded by police officers, and we see him calling to his wife. He said, "It was a dream, honey." And then he screams, "What the F?" as we see Benjamin Elliott being led out of the house by police. He tells police, I don't know what I'll do if she dies. It was just a dream." And then it wasn't. Police cars line the streets in this suburban Houston neighborhood. It's raining as Benjamin Elliott is walked to the police cruiser. The sheriff tells Benjamin he's going to do a quick search of him and then put him in the back seat to get him out of the rain. And we see all this in the video. And at this point, you're probably like most people who heard about the case. And most people are skeptical. Could someone really dream that they were killing someone only to wake up and find themselves, in fact, murdering someone?
We see Benjamin in handcuffs as he gets in the back seat of the police car. And I think hearing the 911 call and being able to see this body cam footage of Benjamin and the family when police arrive, and hearing his words and his voice as he tries to explain what's happening is valuable to this story.
I agree with you.
Because if someone tried to just tell me this story without showing me those elements, I don't know if I would have believed it. But I hear what sounds like genuine concern from Benjamin, and I'm intrigued by this story. I want to know, can this actually happen? Is it possible for someone to be so completely unaware and think that they're dreaming when committing a violent act like this?
Dr. Simmons, who is a neurologist and sleep disorder specialist, says it on the show. Yes, it is in fact that. It was a sleepwalking incident. Benjamin did in fact kill his sister, but he didn't intend to do it. Now the prosecutor, her name is Megan Long in the case, does not buy it. And she doesn't believe that it could happen this way. It's the morning of September 29th, 2021. We see 17-year-old Benjamin on screen walking into a police interrogation video wearing a blue jumpsuit. This is just hours after he admitted to stabbing his sister. He sits down in a chair that's in a corner very calmly. He adjusts his jumpsuit. He brushes the bangs off his forehead. The officer asks Benjamin, "So what happened?" To which Benjamin says, "You ever have like a really realistic nightmare where everything feels real but also off at the same time?"
Benjamin tells the detective he stabbed his sister one time, and we see a picture of the knife on the screen, and it's no pocket knife. It's a big knife.
Benjamin remembers going to sleep, and he says the next thing he remembers is the feeling of stabbing someone. He says he was in her room, meaning his sister's room, and he turned on the light and he was panicking. And he says he tried to stop the bleeding with a pillow, but the blood coming out of his sister's stab wound would not stop. So he says he ran into his room and got his phone and called 911. We hear more of the 911 call, where Benjamin's dad is heard saying, "What's going on?" And Benjamin screaming, "I killed Megan, I'm so sorry."
The twins' parents are on screen now telling the story. They are both visibly distraught. Benjamin's dad says he remembers seeing Megan that night after the stabbing and says she was gray. That's
Terrible.
how he remembers seeing her. They recall Benjamin being handcuffed and sitting in the police car for 3 hours while police piece together what happened.
During the police interrogation, Benjamin is asked how his relationship with Megan was, to which he responds, "Good, she's my twin sister. I'd do anything for her." He told police that there was no rivalry and the two of them are super close.
He says there weren't any recent fights, and his voice here sounds a little bit more upbeat when he's talking about Megan. We also hear Benjamin in this video asking if Megan is okay, and we learn that police didn't tell him right away that she died. We hear that police did this so Benjamin would keep talking and tell them more about his relationship with his sister.
Benjamin told police there were no issues at home, and he was thinking about studying mechanical engineering at college, and that he was taking the SAT later that week.
We also learned that Benjamin was scrolling through his phone that night, the night that this happened. And he went to sleep, he says, around 2:30 or 3:30 in the morning.
The officer asked Benjamin about the knife that he had used to kill Megan, and he says he had received it from his dad, and his dad had given it to him that day.
Benjamin describes the knife to police in the interrogation video, and he describes it as an Air Force survival knife, he says. And he also adds that he was really enamored by it.
Benjamin had the knife next to his bed, we hear, and we see pictures of the knife that he used to kill his sister. The knife has a black blade and it has a brown handle. It's very pointed at the front and serrated. It reminds me of the K-Bara knife that was used by Brian Kohberger in the Idaho murder case that resulted in 4 college students being killed inside their home. Remember that?
Yeah, it does look very similar.
It looks very similar. And we hear that knives were common in this house.
We learned that the twins' parents had a large collection of knives in the house. Apparently, the family is into camping. You're into camping, kind of.
I like to camp. Okay, so let me break down my camping for you. I have to have an air mattress at a minimum. I have to be near toilets and showers. Mm-hmm. I think RV camping is more of my idea of camping,
okay,
as opposed to tenting.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a few number of knives to do different survival-y things with?
I mean, I have a hatchet.
One hatchet.
But I don't have like a machete. Actually, I think we do have a machete at home.
Oh dear.
I mean, we're not like knife collectors.
Okay.
Are you guys?
No. Are you kidding?
Tina is a candle collector. Her house always smells great.
I do love a candle. Maybe that means I like fire because I like to light the candle.
Ooh, a little pyro here.
Okay, back to the story. So the family's into camping. They have a lot of knives. The twins' mom, Kathy, works for the Girl Scouts, is what the show tells us, and the twins' father, Michael, is a stay-at-home dad. Michael is on the screen now, and he says, if I hadn't given him that knife, none of this would have happened.
And the parents throughout the time that they're on screen, they are crying. You can see the hurt.
Absolutely. I mean, I do not know how one goes on after something like this happens to their family. We hear Benjamin was in the interrogation room for 2 hours before police told him his sister died. And we see the moment when police tell him Megan didn't make it. We see Benjamin drop his head when he hears the news. And he doesn't say anything, but he does make a noise as he's dropping his head. Sort of something that sounds like,
A close family friend says everyone was shocked by the crime since Benjamin and his sister were so close.
Yes, she says Benjamin was very protective of Megan. And she says Benjamin is soft-spoken. She describes him as smart, funny, a little nerdy. And she describes Megan as sensitive and says she enjoyed writing poetry and drawing and was also diagnosed with autism as a teen. She goes on to say Megan loved Benjamin and would look to him in situations where she was uncomfortable. We hear the narrator ask the twins' parents if they think Benjamin was maybe tired of having to take care of Megan in this way. And they say they believe he enjoyed being able to protect her, and that both Benjamin and Megan seemed happy before any of this happened. We also learned that the twins had recently toured separate universities, with Megan coming a bit more out of her shell in the process.
Mm-hmm. We hear the night of the crime before going to bed, Benjamin and his dad played video games, including one in which they had to use a military-style knife to kill people. Now, the knife in the game reminded Benjamin's dad of the knife he owned, and that's when he ended up giving the real-life knife to his son. We learn on the show that Megan had not just been stabbed once. We see an autopsy drawing, which shows that Megan had been stabbed 2 times below the left ear in the neck, and she also had a cut on her neck. Now, one of the wounds was 4 inches deep and severed her carotid artery and jugular vein. At this point, Benjamin was charged with murder. And a few days later, Benjamin was brought before a Harris County judge and ended up being released on bail and released into the custody of his parents. But we hear that it wasn't the same Ben that the family knew.
Michael describes the first time he saw Ben after this happened, and it sounds like Benjamin was in another world. He didn't really seem like he saw his father at first, is what Michael is saying. And he also remembers seeing Benjamin a little bit surprised to see him. And in the car ride home, the twins' parents say Benjamin was quiet and would only respond to them with one-word answers. So they pulled over, and at that point, they say they told Benjamin they loved him. And they exchanged hugs.
Seeing the hurt in these two parents breaks my heart. On one hand, they're wrecked from losing their daughter in such a horrific way. And on the other hand, they're faced with their son, who they also love, who has confessed to killing his twin. And I think everyone at this point is still in shock from what has happened.
Agreed.
The family ended up not being able to go home since their house was still a crime scene, so they moved in with Benjamin's grandmother. Now, Benjamin, meanwhile, we hear was terrified that he would hurt someone else.
The parents put an alarm on Benjamin's door, and we also find out they are told by their attorneys not to talk to Benjamin about the night that Megan was killed.
As a parent, you want to know as much as possible and not to be able to ask this person about it. I think that even adds to the hurt of it all.
That you can't talk about it. You can't get it off your chest. You can't talk through what happened. That has to be very difficult.
It's this giant elephant in the room,
right,
at all times. We heard that the family was worried that maybe Benjamin had an underlying mental illness that no one had known about. So Benjamin saw a psychiatrist who determined that Benjamin was fine. He was all right. So could a sleepwalking defense really hold up in court was the next question. And it sounds shocking to think about, but it wouldn't be the first time that it was presented as reason for murder, which really surprised me.
I agree, me too. We hear that in Canada in 1997, Keith Parks killed his mother-in-law by beating her with a tire iron and then stabbing her, and he claims he was asleep the entire 14-mile drive to her house and throughout the crime. And he was cleared by a jury, and they said he was not guilty. In 2010, in North Carolina, Joseph Mitchell claimed he was sleepwalking when he strangled his 4-year-old son and attacked his 2 other children. Again, the jury decided in that case not guilty.
So Benjamin's defense attorney set up a meeting with Dr. Simmons, the neurologist and sleep expert. And we hear that Benjamin went in for a sleep study to be observed and be monitored while he slept to see if he experienced something called para-insomnia, which is when someone does an abnormal behavior while they're asleep, like sleepwalking, for instance.
Dr. Simmons says he was skeptical when he first heard about this case and wasn't even sure he wanted anything to do with it. But he recognized that he was the kind of expert that they needed to figure out if this could actually happen. There was no one else who would be able to do this. So Dr. Simmons is told that Benjamin has a history of sleepwalking. And we hear that the twins' older sister Elizabeth found him sleepwalking one night by her bedroom door. Also, during a sleepover with friends, Benjamin was asleep at the couch on one point eating a donut. And was confused when his friends woke him up. We also learn sleepwalking was common among some of Benjamin's extended family members, including an aunt and uncle.
So Benjamin was brought in on 2 separate occasions for the sleep study. We see a picture of Benjamin, and he has a whole lot of wires and electrodes hooked up to his head in the picture, which will monitor his brain and sleep while he is, well, asleep. And we learned that Benjamin has obstructive sleep apnea.
And that's when your airways are partially blocked, which disturbs your sleep pattern. And Dr. Simmons says that could trigger sleepwalking.
We hear that sleepwalking will normally occur in non-REM slow wave style sleep. Say that 10 times fast.
No,
Holy
thank you.
moly. And Benjamin would enter into this cycle very quickly. We hear from Dr. Simmons that it would be 11 minutes from the time the lights were shut off that Benjamin would fall asleep and fall into this non-REM slow wave sleep. Non-REM slow wave sleep. I can't say that.
Non-REM slow wave sleep. Wow.
This is very important because on the night Benjamin killed his sister, his phone activity showed that he was on it until 4:17 in the morning. And that 911 call came in at 4:41 in the morning. That's only 24 minutes. And we hear this could be a sign that Benjamin was, in fact, sleepwalking.
Now, Benjamin didn't sleepwalk during this study, but wow, I think this information is fascinating. Dr. Simmons says he thinks Benjamin was sleeping when he killed his sister and says it was parainsomnia. He says he thinks the act of the knife penetrating something is what woke him up.
At this point, the Elliott family was hopeful that prosecutors would drop the case. But in April of 2023, a grand jury indicted Benjamin Elliott on first-degree murder.
At this time, it's been a year and a half since Megan was killed, and Benjamin is 19 now. Some interesting things happen here. One of the prosecutors and her children, she says, are all sleepwalkers. Also, she disputes the claim that Benjamin is a sleepwalker because his parents don't sleepwalk.
I have nothing to say to that. I'm just like, what? Why?
Yeah. I mean, there is family history or other family members. Yeah, I found that bizarre.
The prosecution also hired their own sleep expert, psychologist Dr. Mark Pressman, who says Benjamin was not sleepwalking when he stabbed his sister to death. Pressman claims that sleepwalkers only become physical when someone interferes with them.
Dr. Pressman says it's more a reflex when this happens with the sleepwalker, something like hitting or kicking someone to protect themselves when they wake up.
And Dr. Pressman says that Benjamin would also have needed to unsheath the knife which he used to kill Megan, something the psychologist says is a conscious action. Now, a sheath for the knife, like we had talked about on the Koberger episode a few weeks back, is the cover, like the blade cover for the knife. So Dr. Pressman is saying that Benjamin would needed to pull the sheath off the knife, which he then used to kill Megan. Something that the psychologist says is a conscious action. And I'm skeptical of this theory since I think the entire act of sleepwalking is unconscious, in my opinion. Someone doesn't consciously go to the kitchen, eat a donut, and then mop their floor, for instance. But people do this sometimes while they're sleepwalking. If it's something that you commonly do, for instance, going to the toilet, I think even while sleepwalking, this is possible. You're habitual about getting out of bed, walking to the toilet, pulling down your pants, sitting down, and going potty. It's habit. Same thing with this knife. Despite having just been gifted the knife earlier that evening, in order for Benjamin or his dad to see the knife blade, they would have needed to unsheath the knife. He's removing it. It's part of the act of looking at the knife. It's something they likely did a few times that evening. That created a habit.
I agree with you on this. And also, I don't know if we note this elsewhere, but I do remember that they did say on the show that Dr. Pressman didn't interview Benjamin or talk to him. So this is just the information that he's reacting to the information he's given.
Exactly. That's a very good thing to point out, Tina. Dr. Pressman says it's also unusual for a sleepwalker to recall an action. Like Benjamin telling police in the interrogation video that he remembers feeling like he was stabbing something. This is something that I can understand. If you've ever been around a sleepwalker, you know they do not recall what they are doing while they're sleepwalking. They don't recall going to the bathroom. They don't recall going to the refrigerator and getting that donut. Meanwhile, Dr. Simmons didn't agree.
He says Benjamin recalled details that he remembers, and it actually would have been easier for him to say he doesn't remember anything if he were being dishonest.
One thing that absolutely baffled me, though, is that Dr. Pressman, the psychologist for the prosecution, never spoke to Benjamin like Tina had said.
Right.
It baffles me. It's shocking to me because I'd imagine you'd want to know as many things as possible about Ben and have him recount to you again how this happened.
Yes, ma'am. I absolutely agree.
I also find it interesting that there was no motive for this killing. Normally, there's a motive. people usually, and I use the word usually, I want to put like asterisks around that word, right? People usually, and I use the word usually because we've covered several of these cases where the victim did not know the killer. But usually in a familial type situation, which this is a brother killing his sister, there's a reason why someone kills someone.
So the prosecutor says there is no motive because he was sleepwalking, or there is no motive because no one is telling us the motive.
At this point, the narrator tells the prosecutor that Benjamin called 911. He wasn't trying to hide anything.
Prosecutors say they think he made the call after realizing he couldn't hide what he did. They also point out that in the 911 call, Benjamin sounds like he's whispering or trying to keep his voice down, when they say that he should have been more frantic or yelling for help.
Prosecutors also say that by the time emergency responders got to the scene and saw Ben doing CPR on his sister, she was already dead. And we hear Benjamin tell police that his house is now a crime scene in the police interrogation video, something prosecutors say is bizarre because it's not something most 17-year-olds would say. Instead, they would call it their home. Now, to me, this isn't very telling because we all watch crime shows nowadays. We all play crime video games. Truthfully, I feel like death and destruction and talking about it has become second nature to people. I mean, you and I have a true crime podcast, Tina. We study death and destruction for this every single day. And I don't think it's too outlandish for people, including teenagers, to describe the scene of a crime as a crime scene.
I see what you're saying, but I will say when I heard him call his house a crime scene during this interrogation video, it did stand out to me without, being prompted by it. I did think it was weird. So here's what happens. Police asked Benjamin during his interrogation where his phone was. They said, "Benjamin, where's your phone?" And you hear Benjamin say, "It's at the crime scene." And when I heard him say this, I definitely thought this was a weird thing to say. I think I would have said, "It's at home. My phone's at home." But I also wonder if he's specifically saying his phone was in Megan's room, which, when he was last there, was a crime scene.
That's a really good point. Now, during the police interrogation, we hear Benjamin tell police that his sister had been severely depressed for a time, which prosecutors say could be a sign that not everything was as great inside the Elliott home after all.
Benjamin's attorneys say there was no reason why he would kill Megan. They said he had nothing to gain and everything to lose.
We hear before the trial, prosecutors offer Ben a plea deal. The deal? 30 years in prison, which Benjamin turned down. So that takes us to February 18th of 2025, when Benjamin's first-degree murder trial started. Tina, you love a courtroom. Tell me about it.
The challenge for the defense is proving to a jury that Benjamin was sleepwalking when he killed his sister, and that it was the only reason this happened. And the challenge for prosecutors is convincing a jury that Benjamin wasn't sleepwalking, but killed his sister even without a clear motive. We hear the prosecutor's opening arguments saying he calls 911 at 4:41 a.m. and they imitate the whispered 911 call to the jury. They describe his behavior in the interrogation video, his reaction or lack thereof when told Megan died, and they also tell jury that they think Benjamin covered Megan's head with a pillow, not to stop her from bleeding, but to smother her, keep her from screaming when he stabbed her. We also see video of Michael, the twins' father, on the stand when prosecutors show him a photo from Megan's autopsy and ask him to identify Megan.
That was so bad to watch.
Michael clearly has a lot of emotion looking at that photo, and he looks pretty upset about having to see it, and I think it was a cruel thing to do to show him that photo.
I agree. There were a couple things in this trial that I was just like, prosecutors, what are you guys doing?
Then we hear from the defense, and they tell the jury this is no ruse, and it's not some made-up defense. They tell the jury sleepwalking is a real phenomenon. And the defense also says Benjamin making the 911 call shows he was desperate to save Megan. And we hear them play the parts where he's saying, "Oh my God," and "I thought it was a dream," and "I don't want her to die." They also point out the body cam footage that shows Benjamin trying to perform CPR on Megan. And then we hear again from the family friend who talks about how devoted Benjamin was to Megan. And Jen, remember that sleepover where he was eating a donut on the couch?
Yep.
Well, they bring in one of the friends that was at that sleepover when Benjamin was eating the donut on the couch, and he appears at the trial and talks about how he saw Benjamin looking genuinely confused and baffled when they woke him up that night. Benjamin's great aunt also takes the stand to talk about her sleepwalking history. And she tells the jury how she found herself in the woods at one time.
Wow.
And she says all that she remembers from that is waking up in the bushes holding her dog.
Sounds like something you would do.
Me? I am no sleepwalker.
No sleepwalker.
Goodness.
But you would have your dog with you.
You're right. If I were to sleepwalk, the dog's coming with me.
We hear the star witness for the defense was Dr. Simmons, who presented his sleep study findings for more than 4 hours. Prosecutors, meanwhile, called their own sleepwalking expert, Dr. Pressman, who said that Benjamin was not sleepwalking when he killed his sister because he had memory of what had happened that night and claimed that Benjamin had come out of his sleepwalking state faster than any other person he knew of. Now, the prosecutor's closing arguments were intense. We see video of the prosecutor holding the murder weapon, the knife, in his hand, without gloves, I may add. And he told the jury that Benjamin had walked into his sister's room, stabbed her twice in the neck, and then there was blood all over the pillow because Benjamin had used it to try to muffle his sister's screams. The defense attorney, meanwhile, pushed back, saying Benjamin wasn't trying to cover something up because he called 911 and was trying to help save his sister's life.
The prosecutor also claimed the family was trying to cover something up and protect Benjamin by calling a lawyer friend when this happened. And the prosecutor says something that I think is a bit out of line here.
A bit? I thought it was very out of line.
She says to the jury to look at the courtroom and see all the people here that are here for Benjamin. And she says there's no one here for Megan. I think it was way harsh.
Agreed.
To say that. And we see the reactions of the twins' parents when she says this in the courtroom, and they look horrified.
They are crying. They are flabbergasted when she said this.
Yes, and she goes on to say there was no remorse shown by Benjamin during the trial, but I will note Benjamin did not take the stand during his trial. And we hear the jury was split at first, with several of the jury members also having knowledge and experience of sleepwalking.
After 4 days of back and forth, the case went to the jury, and after 4 hours of deliberation, Benjamin was found guilty of murder. And we see video of Ben's mom and dad, and they look absolutely stunned. His mom's mouth literally hangs open in shock, and his dad looks equally shocked.
Benjamin doesn't have much of a reaction here either. And to me, he looks solemn, maybe even in shock. We do hear from a few of the jury members, and one of them mentions that in the interrogation video, it didn't look like he had a lot of remorse.
And at this point, we hear from Benjamin himself as he sits in front of the narrator wearing shackles around his waist, handcuffs around his wrists, and an orange prison jumpsuit. He said he is convinced he was sleepwalking because he loved his sister and would never have done this, and she was his best and closest friend. Now, Benjamin tells Aaron Moriarty, the narrator, that he's not guilty of murder.
Benjamin is either a top-notch, Oscar-worthy actor, a psychopath who can easily lie, or he's telling the truth, because I believe him.
I do too.
He also says in regards to the prosecutor saying no one in the courtroom was there for Megan, he disagrees and says everyone was there for Megan. The day after trial, Benjamin is brought back to the courtroom for sentencing, with prosecutors asking for a 40-year sentence.
But Benjamin was sentenced to 15 years in prison. This after a jury member had asked the judge for leniency for Ben and Megan's family members. Now, Benjamin says something that really resonated. Why would a jury ask for leniency if you believe someone crept into their sister's room and brutally murdered her while she was asleep? Benjamin wants to know, and I want to know, and I think Tina wants to know. Why would you ask for leniency when that person is a horrible person? The narrator asks Benjamin if he is that horrible person, and he says no, and then he tries to be genuine and honest and likes to think of himself as a good person.
Benjamin says he wasn't whispering on that 911 call. He says he was panicking and doesn't normally yell or scream anyway. And his voice here also sounds pretty quiet and soft-spoken. He says his demeanor in the interrogation room, where he's talking to investigators about his future career and SAT, was him trying to get his mind off of what was going on. He says he didn't want to think about what was happening. He also says when he was told that Megan died and he had that reaction of his head dropping down and him just saying, he says that reaction was him shutting down.
One thing I can say after listening and watching Benjamin's interrogation video and both this interview with him, he's a very quiet and reserved person. He doesn't speak loudly and he doesn't place much inflection in his voice. It's not like me. It's not like me at all. He's very calm, and I think he's very smart and chooses his words wisely. And I think he thinks before he speaks, something, truthfully, I need to start doing more of.
Me too, probably.
Benjamin says he doesn't think he's guilty of anything. He says he used to blame himself but doesn't anymore. And he could not have done anything differently than what he had done. And Benjamin says he misses his twin sister, Megan. And Benjamin will be eligible for parole in 2032 when he's 28 years old. And at this point, he is, in fact, appealing his conviction.
I think this whole story is beyond tragic. You have the twins' parents who have now lost 2 of their children. And I'm not convinced Benjamin killed his sister on purpose after watching all of this. But at the same time, I do understand how he took his sister's life. You can't bring her back. It's irreversible. And I do feel like you should have to serve some sentence when you take a life. It's just a horrible, horrible thing that happened. The whole thing.
From all this, I can honestly say, I don't think he did it on purpose. I could totally be wrong. And of course, everyone is allowed to have their own opinion on this. But I truly believe that it was a tragic accident. And I do think he was, in fact, sleepwalking. And when he came to, probably in the middle of the act of stabbing his sister, he called 911. And he was calm on the call, not out of fear of getting in trouble, but because that's the kind of person he is. I don't think he's the type to get hysterical. I think this entire case was an accident, but now Benjamin will be in prison for the next decade and a half, and the family now has to pick up the pieces of their life without Megan and without Benjamin, and it's a heartbreak all around.
This is the type of story that I think everybody should watch and really just form your own opinion of what you think happened. I'm interested to know what others think about this story and what they think happened and how they think that this whole thing played out. It's such a twisted story.
It really is. It's a 48 hours episode called The Boy Who Killed His Twin. It's season 38, episode 1. And it's, like Tina said, go watch it. It's interesting.
Very intriguing.
So with that, we want to say thank you guys for listening. We'd love to hear what you think. Send us an email to crimenewsies@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Message us on Facebook, Instagram. We're 2 Crime Newsies. I want to know what you think.
Yeah, and also I want to know what you think of our podcast.
Yeah, share it with a friend if you like it.
Share it with a friend. Thank you, Jen. Also, go to your podcast app, any podcast app that you use, and leave us a 5-star review. We'd love to hear from you. It makes our day.
Tina and I message each other via text every time we get a new review and are like, high five, friend.
Definitely.
All right, everyone, our 2 Crime Newsies audience out there, thank you so much for being with us for another week, and thank you for letting us do what we love and supporting us. We're having so much fun.
We sure are. I sure am.
Yes. All right. We will be talking to you guys soon. Bye.